It's almost unbelievable that in a land where winter could swallow all signs of life, the Vikings discovered a method of survival so brutal, yet so refined that even modern engineers would be stunned. They had no glass windows, no sealed fireplaces, no steel, and no high-tech materials, and yet their homes, built from wood, earth, and grass, could retain warmth even when the air outside was cold enough to crack skin. Even more astonishing is that this system wasn't an accident. It was the result of centuries of trial, error, and adaptation to a climate where the smallest draft could kill an entire family overnight. These longhouses weren't just shelters, they were colossal heat-preserving machines. Every wall layer, every airflow channel, every stone, and even every creature sharing the space played a part in their quiet war against the northern cold. Looking back, it becomes clear. The Vikings were not only fierce on the battlefield, they were masters of survival itself. They learned how to bend nature to their will, using solutions so simple, yet so brilliantly effective that they still feel like strokes of genius today. When people think of Viking homes, they often imagine rough wooden huts scattered across a frozen landscape, but the truth goes far beyond that simple picture. A Viking longhouse wasn't just a building, it was almost a living creature, given breath and warmth by the very people who spent half their lives riding the sea. They brought their shipbuilding mentality onto land and created a house with a curved hull, shaped like the side of a boat, so that the wind would never strike it head-on, but glide past it, softening the brutal force of northern storms. Inside that curved structure was the entire life of the community. The chieftain, the extended family, servants, and even slaves all living, working, and sleeping together under one roof, like the crew of a ship sailing through an endless winter. What might seem like uncomfortable crowding was, in fact, essential for survival. Dozens of human bodies radiating heat inside a tightly enclosed space created a natural warmth far stronger than any single hearth could offer. In that sense, the longhouse wasn't merely a home. It was a grounded ship's hull, a thermal fortress where every soul inside was both a passenger and a vital source of energy, helping the whole structure endure in the icy world around it. What surprises many people is that while we now rely on blueprints, software, and layers of technical procedures, the Vikings more than 1,000 years ago had already mastered a principle modern architects call passive wind-oriented design. They positioned their homes with precise alignment to the north, south, east, and west to minimize heat loss. They avoided placing doors on the gable ends, where the wind struck with the greatest force, and instead hid the entrance along the long side of the house, a naturally shielded area protected from violent gusts. But the biggest twist lies in something most would assume to be the weakest element: the wooden posts. Far from being flimsy planks, the longhouse stood firm thanks to massive pillars of pine, oak, or birch, some so large they had to be buried deep into the earth, like the legs of a beast anchoring itself against a blizzard. These posts didn't just support the roof. They acted like the spine of a fortress, gripping the ground with silent strength, allowing the entire structure to withstand storms that could tear lesser houses apart. In other words, Viking architecture wasn't primitive at all. It was instinctive engineering, sharpened across centuries, and powerful enough to tame even the harshest northern winds. Between those towering posts, the Vikings didn't use wooden walls the way we imagine. Instead of relying on planks that would rot in the cold, damp climate, they built a multi-layered wall system, a structure in which every material played a precise role. From the timber frame to the packed earth, from the interwoven grass roots to the stone foundation, each layer worked like a component in a suit of armor. This wasn't a wall in the modern sense at all. It was a thick defensive shell, built from turf blocks stacked in a crisscross pattern to lock out wind, seal out moisture, and trap heat inside like a colossal natural thermos. The more you think about it, the more astonishing it becomes. A building made with almost no nails, no steel, no glass, yet engineered with a level of sophistication that rivals modern thermal design. So what do you think? If you had to spend a winter in the far north, inside a Viking longhouse, do you think it would feel warmer or colder than a modern home? Share your thoughts below. Who knows? Your perspective might reveal something new about Viking engineering that we still underestimate today. Among all the Viking secrets of staying warm, nothing is more astonishing than the turf wall, something that, from a distance, looks like nothing more than soil, grass, and mud, yet functions as the very heart of their insulation system. While many imagine Vikings living in simple wooden huts, the truth is that most longhouse walls weren't wooden at all. Timber was used only for the structural frame. The real brilliance lay in the body of the house. Blocks of turf, thick slices of earth cut like bricks, with densely interwoven grass roots stacked in V-shaped or crisscross patterns to increase density and lock out even the coldest wind. At the base, these walls could reach 1.5 to 2 meters thick, essentially forming a miniature fortress wall. What makes it even more remarkable is that these walls weren't dead, they were alive. Because the soil and grass roots still retained moisture, the turf blocks continued bonding together long after construction. By spring, a fresh layer of green grass would grow across the outside, turning the entire house into part of the hillside. Without the faint plume of smoke rising from the roof vent, you might not even realize anyone lived inside. And beneath that small hill lay something astonishingly warm. Hundreds of tiny air pockets inside the soil acted like modern foam insulation, keeping the indoor temperature stable even when the northern winds screamed across the landscape. Among all the Viking survival techniques, none is more controversial than the fact that they lived inside the longhouse with their livestock. From a modern perspective, it feels filthy, dark, and almost unthinkable. But to the Vikings, cattle and sheep in winter weren't just assets. They were living heaters, working day and night without ever going out. Half the house, sometimes even more, was reserved as an animal stall, separated from the living area by nothing more than a thin, loosely built wooden partition. It was deliberately not airtight, so that the warmth and body heat of the animals could drift naturally into the space where people slept, cooked, and worked. When a single large cow produces as much heat as a small fireplace, keeping 10 or more inside a sheltered space becomes an enormous heat source that costs no firewood at all. The Vikings also used natural convection to their advantage. The human living quarters were slightly raised, just a few dozen centimeters above the animal area, allowing the warmer air rising from the livestock to flow directly into the part of the house where they needed it most. In a winter that could last 8 months, this co-living arrangement was a very real boundary between survival and death. Of course, the smell and noise were the price they paid, and a heavy one. But in a land where daylight was scarce and the cold could kill a person within hours, the Vikings lived by one rule only: stay warm and live, or grow cold and die. At the center of a Viking longhouse, where the darkness hangs, thick like a curtain hiding every secret, there lay an endless line of fire, what they called the longhouses. Unlike our neat, contained fireplaces, this flame stretched from one end of the house to the other, like a glowing dragon resting along the earthen floor. The great stones surrounding it were not merely barriers. They were heat sinks, stone hearts that soaked up the fire's warmth, glowed with it, and released it slowly through the long, freezing hours of the night. The Vikings burned wood when they had it, but in tree-scarce lands like Iceland, they relied on peat, a fuel that smoldered rather than blazed, steady and stubborn, much like the people themselves. This long ribbon of fire was both kitchen and lifeline. Iron cauldrons hung from chains above it, and its amber light painted the beams, the faces, and the drifting smoke in a glow that felt half mythical, half disciplining. The heart of the entire longhouse system was here. Without this fire, the whole community would fall into absolute darkness, absolute cold, and absolute silence. This was the single point where life persisted, where the Vikings cooked, talked, repaired tools, planned their seasons, and confronted winter as though facing a real and present enemy. What shocks most people is that a Viking longhouse had no chimney at all. A dark, enclosed building with a fire burning day and night, yet no one suffocated. The answer lies in a mechanism so simple, it feels almost unbelievable. They let the smoke rise freely, gathering into a dense black cloud just beneath the roof, and then slip out through a small sky hole, an adjustable opening controlled with a wooden cover and a long pole kept beside the hearth. With just a slight nudge of that cover, the entire breathing rhythm of the house changed instantly. But the most viral, most unexpected twist is the side effect. That massive volume of smoke preserved the building. The constant smoke cured the beams and roof, timbers, turning them pitch black and making them nearly immune to insects, rot, mold, and time itself. A longhouse roof treated with this natural smoke armor could last decades, even a century, while any wooden house lacking this smoky protection would quickly decay in the cold, damp climate of the north. Primitive? No, It was one of the cleverest, most efficient preservation systems ever created, born not from technology, but from survival. The smoke itself created a strange kind of light, dim, ghostly, almost otherworldly, turning the longhouse into a realm that felt half myth, half survival. The Vikings didn't burn fire merely for warmth. They let the fire and smoke nourish the house, as though it were a living organism. And if there was one moment when the Vikings truly flexed on nature, it was in the way they turned their greatest enemy, snow, into their most powerful ally. While the modern world sees heavy snowfall as disaster, as red alert weather, the Vikings would stand in the middle of a whiteout and say, "Let it fall. The more the better." Their multi-layered turf roof wasn't designed to resist snow. It was designed to catch it. When the first storms of winter rolled in, snow clung to the roof, slid down the walls, and piled into white ramparts taller than a person. Within days, the longhouse became a massive snow-covered mound, practically disappearing from sight. And that was the moment it reached its strongest state, with temperatures outside dropping to 30 degrees Celsius. The packed snow, often more than a meter thick, acted as a platinum armor, an insulation layer more effective than many modern homes. If social media had existed back then, the Vikings would have bragged endlessly. "Our house doesn't fear snow. We wear it like a cloak." A form of show-off colder than ice, literally. By this point, the longhouse had a triple-layer defense system, the timber frame as its bones, the turf, walls and roof as its flesh, and the snow layer as its final suit of armor. Nature wanted to attack them? They used nature itself to fight back. What surprises people most isn't the turf walls or the snow armor, it's the world inside the longhouse. A sealed, narrow, dim space where your eyes need minutes to adjust. Yet the longer you look, the more you understand why it was considered a ship of life sailing through an endless winter. Along both walls ran long wooden benches, the places where Vikings ate, worked, repaired tools, and slept. Raising these platforms above the earthen floor didn't just keep them dry. It placed them in the warmest layer of air, a subtle but brilliant detail that shows just how cunning they were in their fight against the cold. Down the center lay the dirt walkway and the long ribbon of fire, the axis where every sound, scent, and heartbeat of the house converged into a single living rhythm. Outside the longhouse, they built specialized structures like extensions of a body, semi-subterranean forges, where the surrounding soil trapped enough heat for blacksmiths to work even in midwinter. Small bathhouses, where glowing stones were splashed with water to create steam. Low storage huts for weaving wool, storing food, or crafting wood. Each of these satellite buildings connected back to the longhouse in purpose and function, like auxiliary organs keeping the entire community alive. The result was a settlement that didn't feel like a cluster of huts, but a single, interconnected organism, designed to endure the kind of winter that swallowed weaker societies whole. Seeing the entire system as a whole, you realize something profound. The Vikings didn't simply fight nature, they negotiated with it, bent it to their will, and at times even turned it into an ally. In the flickering dimness of the longhouse, with the fire crackling and warmth rising from the earthen floor, they created a survival model, so refined that even modern societies could learn from it. So which part of this living machine fascinates you the most? The turf walls that grow like a hillside? The snow armor that turns storms into protection? The co-living warmth shared between people and animals? Or the long ribbon of fire-breathing life into the house? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might reveal something others haven't noticed yet. And if you'd like to explore more hidden secrets from the Viking Age, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next journey.